I'm here with Andrew Vaz from Juniper Networks, and we are talking about the state and future of 5G. You have said that for service providers in networking, this is one of the most exciting times, especially for network architects. So
Yes.
why do you feel that way?
You know, Sterling, we're in this kind of confluence of so many different things actually happening at once. We have technology that actually is fairly interesting in solving problems, and we actually have business problems from the industry that are aching to be solved. So I've been in the industry for quite some time where we've had technology that was looking for a problem or problems that actually had no way of being solved. We would finally have come to a point where we see enterprises, businesses, public sectors asking service providers to solve specific problems for them. And we finally have some of the technology to do it. Between AI, ML, next-gen routing systems and infrastructure, distributed cloud and automation, we actually have the tool set to go and actually solve these problems.
Interesting. So, you know, as we do our research around 5G, there's a lot of technologies out there. Always talk about a toolbox. It's a very large toolbox, to be honest. But what, you're engaged with a lot of customers right now.
Right.
What, from your engagements, what are the main technologies that are bubbling to the top? What are the service providers asking Juniper to do?
That's a great question. So what I'm seeing is there's a new set of applications that they have to solve for. Before, it was okay just to offer connectivity for all intents and purposes. It might be residential mobile connectivity or maybe a business VPN connectivity even, for example. Now the problem set's getting more complex. For example, somebody might want a particular network slice with a set of SLAs attached to it. Latency, bandwidth, availability, security, there's a whole host of new things to think about. So if we think about the traditional set of 5G next-gen services, right? We start with eMBB, which is essentially more bandwidth. So that in itself has a new set of technology all the way from 10, 25, 100, 400 gig. So there's a strategy required there and set of technologies. If we go look at the more interesting use cases around MMTC for like IoT, next-gen industrialization, or if I look at URLLC, where we have very latency-sensitive applications, there's a whole new set of technologies we need to look at. So, for example, network slicing becomes very interesting. So we see a lot of people asking about segment routing. How do I take my MPLS network, add segment routing on top of it to basically offer a programmable network infrastructure? So if a customer asks for something, I can react rapidly and quickly and agilely to go implement those services. Those are two key ones. eVPN is another protocol which becomes very interesting since it leverages all the good things from BGP for layer 2 services. So active-active type of availability, realizing and using BGP for faster convergence times, et cetera. We're able to actually put together multiple technologies for this. And then if I add on top of that cloud-based security for connected security and to build out a threat-aware infrastructure, as well as like machine learning and AI algorithms to go and automate the network more effectively. There's just like a whole host of interesting technologies that make it very exciting to be in this space right now.
There's a lot there.
A ton, yeah.
So, we look at, there's a lot of announcements from service providers announcing initial 5G globally. A lot of that really does seem focused on the enhanced broadband, faster speeds. The impacts to the transport network, though, initially, we haven't seen, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't seen tremendous amount of, major impact versus an LTE advanced type of deployment.
Right.
Do the transport networks really need to be upgraded, and does that really need to happen now, or is this infrastructure in place going to kind of carry them through?
Yeah, so wonderful question. And the way I look at this is, if you are looking to build a 5G ready network, not just for eMBB, but for the next set of services, you have to start now. The breadth of things you need to think about, like we said, security, automation, timing, latency, bandwidth, slicing your network, all of those require, frankly, to be very well thought out. We're actually seeing service providers come back to us with specific use cases they're getting from enterprises. So there's a very interesting dynamic happening in the enterprise itself. The spending shift has happened in enterprises where we see budget formerly allocated to IT. A good portion of that is actually being allocated back to the enterprise line of business heads. So these guys are told, go make the money and tell us what we need to do to go drive the business. So they're looking to partner with service providers, cloud service providers, mobile network operators to go build out their next gen set of services for the enterprise. So because of these new sets of applications, what I'm seeing is service providers are trying to figure out, how do I architect this network? What should my transport look like? What should my cloud distribution look like? My core SP data center is not going to be able to handle the latency requirements as I look at some of these newer sets of applications. So how do I distribute that further out to my edge? Or how do I even distribute that on-prem to an enterprise, for example?
So you see the advanced use cases that are really the promise of 5G, you really do see that primarily driven from the enterprise side.
I do 100%. Yeah. The money is there, first of all, and I think the money talks. So with that shift, you're seeing the service providers starting to respond as well to say, how do I go and enable this? And it's not just traditional enterprises, it's also public sector. We're seeing a lot of smart city projects. We're seeing a lot of first responder type networks being asked to be built out where they have high security, high availability, private slices within SP networks that various towns and regions want to use.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned security, I think at least 3 times,
Yes.
so I have to ask you about security. Something, as I've looked at transport so far, I actually haven't delved too much into security. What are the implications for security, to the transport? What are you hearing?
So I personally feel as an industry have not focused enough on security from an operator perspective. The more I look at it, if we multiply out just some basic numbers, I think the number I saw was like 75 billion connected devices by 2021, I think was the number. Each one of those devices is actually a threat surface. It's actually something that can be used to attack the network. I had a conversation with a CTO in Europe who basically said the number of attacks on their mobile data center has gone up 400%. It's just crazy. So I think there's several different things we need to look at in terms of security in the market right now. Both the volume and the types of attacks have increased and varied dramatically. So it's not just about traditional firewalls or traditional security methodologies. We actually have to be able to utilize some of those other technologies we talked about, like ML and AI, to basically start using the compute capabilities, our cloud view of the world, identify bad actors, identify malicious IP addresses, being able to push those devices, those numbers, back down into the infrastructure to protect it dynamically, because they're constantly changing, as you know. So I think we're going to see a big play in building out threat-aware connected infrastructures as we go forward over the next 3 to 5 years.
All right, well, you've convinced me. It is an exciting time to be in networking and to be a network architecture. So great talking with you, Andrew.
Thanks, Sterling.
And,
I appreciate it.
look forward to catching up with you later.
Same. Thanks.